there, Crystal. So Eric and I are taking some time this week to provide screencast feedback for everyone who submitted a draft for Essay 3. And so I had the pleasure of just reading through your draft, which is quite strong, and I really enjoyed reading it. I'm going to quickly address these questions at the top here that you asked before I dive into my comments in the essay. Did you cite correctly? So I haven't looked at the works cited page yet, but as far as citing sources in the actual letter, yes, you are definitely making it clear to the reader where the original source, what the original source is, and then where you found that source. And so I think it's working well. Is it persuasive enough? I think it's getting there. It's pretty persuasive, and I think that you can make a few revisions to really drive it home even more for Jake. Did you provide the right amount of reason? I think there's some awesome reason in here. Again, I'm just going to give you a few suggestions on where I think you can beef that reasoning up a little bit more. But overall, I think that the reason is pretty robust. Enough sources from the chapter? Yes, you did. You're using, I think, Electrode Man. You talk about Socrates. You talk about Mill. I think there's one other source in there, the hedonic treadmill, the reference to that. So that's working well. As far as grammar and wording suggestions, there are a few sentence level errors, but it's not too distracting. It's not really what I like to focus on because I want to focus on the bigger ideas. But if you want to, sometime between now and when the essay is due, if you want to email me and just ask me for feedback, if you just want me to go in and make some corrections or edits or feedback that have to do with the sentence level writing, like the grammar and wording, I'm happy to do that. I'm not going to do that here in this video, but if you want me to do that as an additional layer of support and feedback, I'm happy to. Just reach out and let me know. But as I said, the writing is pretty clear for the most part. I'm not getting tripped up over very much. So let's just go ahead and dive in here with your intro paragraph. I think this is really strong. You've summarized Jake's situation, and then you provide a clear thesis claim. So you're letting him know, I believe you'll be making the right choice if you pursue the path and build your career. So that's a clear thesis, a clear position. It really sets the stage for the rest of the letter. So I also like that you happen to notice, and you mentioned to Jake, you already know that, Jake. You already kind of mentioned in your letter that deep down, becoming a nurse is what's going to bring you satisfaction. So I love it when a writer, a student, is observant enough to notice that and pull that point into this essay, because I think it's so rhetorically effective to say to Jake, Jake, I'm going to give you the advice that you kind of already know this, but let me just flesh out the reasoning for why I think this is the right choice. So that is all working really well. Then you go ahead and you introduce the source that you're going to be using is Eric's book, and you jump into John Stuart Mill. I thought you did a really nice job in this paragraph setting up the source within a source, how you're learning this stuff through Eric, but it actually goes back much further than that to some of these older philosophers. And then you come in and describe what low quality pleasures are and high quality pleasures. And that is so important because Jake has not studied Mill, so he needs to be taught. He needs to understand what are low quality pleasures, what are high quality pleasures, because any analysis that you do of his situation is only going to make sense if he understands the difference between those two things. And so you're doing that very nicely in this paragraph. You do an especially strong job of describing the low quality pleasures to the point where I think Jake will say, yeah, I get it. I see what you're saying, Crystal. Yeah, this makes sense to me. High quality pleasures, I think you're getting there, but these are always a little harder to describe. So my comment here is just urging you to develop this a little bit further. So deepen your description of high quality pleasures. You might ask Jake to think about high quality pleasures as being those things that pay off down the road, but we need to put in some hard work up front. We need to invest our time and effort in order for those to pay off down the road. You gave some really nice examples when you talked about the low quality pleasures, things like football, watching movies. What might be some examples that you could weave in here of high quality pleasures so that Jay can go, oh, I kind of see the difference. Okay, maybe something like playing the piano or learning a second language, or, I don't know, any examples that you come up with to suggest to Jake, there are things that we do that don't come easily, but they have a certain amount of payoff. So what are some relatable examples that you could give him in there to help Jake really picture how high quality pleasures are different from low quality pleasures? So that would be my suggestion right in there. So then you jump into Electrode Man, which I think is a great source to use in this essay. I think Electrode Man offers a lot of really cool support for the position that you're arguing. Fictional character, I think he's actually a real character. You can check with Eric on this if you want to ask him, or maybe look back at the text itself, but I'm pretty sure that Electrode Man is a real story. It's a true story of somebody who had this kind of depression, and they were actually trying different treatments on him to see if there were ways to alleviate this depression. And I think the electrodes and the pleasure, kind of tapping into those pleasure centers was one of the approaches that they tried. And so I would probably just get rid of the word fictional there, and that'll take care of that. But again, you can reach out to Eric if you wanted to double check that. So your handling of Electrode Man is great. I think you describe it really well. And then as we move down to this next paragraph, you're asking Jake, what does this have to do with you? Okay. Well, I think what you're trying to do is draw a parallel here and say, Jake, if you stay at your resort job, you're really kind of acting a lot like Electrode Man, right? You're not really pushing yourself for those high quality pleasures. And so I think that Electrode Man works really well to set up that point. I think you could even mention Electrode Man in this paragraph here. So rather than leaving it behind and having Jake need to make that connection, go ahead and make that connection for him. So, you could say, by staying at your current job, you're only getting low quality pleasures. So much like Jake, or much like Electrode Man Jake, you're experiencing a high quantity of these pleasures, but they're very low in quality, okay? What choice would lead you to a more fulfilling life? As Eric already explained, Mill's ideas, low quality pleasures are easy. There's no depth to them, is I think the word you were looking for there. And they require no work or effort. These pleasures do not produce any growth, and you will remain the same without accomplishing much. By staying in your current job, there will be no progress nor growth happening in your life. But if you choose nursing, even though it will be challenging, in the end, you will learn and gain new knowledge. This will help you grow as a person, and you will experience new realms of pleasures because it'll open up new doors of opportunities. This might be my favorite part of the essay, because you're really showing Jake why the hard work is going to pay off, right? So it's not just choose the harder option because it's harder. It's choose the harder option because there's a greater reward waiting for you if you put in the time and investment. And so really awesome job in this section, capturing why it is that high quality pleasures are so superior to low quality pleasures. So nice job in there. Okay, so this next paragraph, you might feel apprehensive about making a change, like going back to school. It'll require some sacrifice. And then this is where you launch into Socrates. I love this part in here that, Socrates said we should strive for this balance because we want to have a healthy psyche, just as we strive for balance in our bodies. We want to have healthy bodies. So I think that's a great analogy that you're pulling in. And then you talk about the charioteer. This is a nice example of a citation. Eric describes how Socrates explains. That's a really good job of capturing a source within a source. And then you go ahead and tell us what these three things are: reason, spirit, and appetite, how they have important roles, and how we need to have those things in balance if we're really going to flourish. So then you go on to tell Jake a little bit about how he can use those things when he's in nursing school. You can use your reason to focus on your goal. You can use your willpower to limit your distractions, help you control your desires. You're going to be able to get through the challenges if you use all those parts of the charioteer. So I think that that's working really well. My suggestion here is just to maybe help Jake, again, see what the payoff is going to be, okay? So if Jake is going to take Socrates' advice, and he's going to say, all right, I'm going to use my willpower. I'm going to use my reason and willpower to work together to do the hard work of nursing school. What is the payoff? So can you kind of maybe incorporate that a little bit here? Jake, once you get those challenges, once you get through those challenges, you're going to feel satisfied. Imagine, Jake, how amazing it'll feel the first time you get to help somebody as a nurse. Imagine, Jake, how incredible it'll feel the first time that you pass that difficult nursing exam. Imagine what it'll feel like, Jake, when you're graduating and you're walking cross that stage with that diploma that you worked so hard for. So really helping him get a sense of how it is that keeping his psyche in balance is actually going to pay off. And then I think this is a great place where you segue into another way to look at it. You could even, if you developed this idea more, you could start another paragraph here with another way. This is where you're asking Jake to look at the flip side. Jake, let's consider if you don't go to nursing school. Well, you're going to be stuck on the hedonic treadmill. So the hedonic treadmill is a way to describe when we let our desires take control. It's a constant cycle because once one desire is met, another one simply takes its place. When we let these desires take control, we lose our focus on our best interests and tend to make incorrect decisions. Awesome example. The hedonic treadmill is a great piece of evidence to use there. I'm just going to suggest that you tie it a little bit more directly to Jake in case he doesn't see the connection. So this would be a good place to tell Jake, you are on the hedonic treadmill right now. You're at your resort job and you are chasing higher and higher quantity of pleasures, more and more pleasures every day. But that is not going to scratch the itch because according to Socrates, it doesn't compare to the kind of deep, robust, healthy pleasure that you could be feeling if you were fulfilling your desires to become a nurse. You need to use your reason and willpower to pull yourself away from the resort and focus on these other goals. And so I think you're totally on the right track here. I just want to push you to go one step deeper with that. Okay, so I think that that's going to bring us down to the conclusion, which is quite strong. And so all in all, this is a really solid draft. Cristal, you should feel really good about the progress that you've made here. You're demonstrating excellent comprehension of the ideas in chapter 3. You're writing about things clearly. You're organizing things logically. I think you're making a very persuasive argument to Jake, and you can make it even more persuasive if you just think about some of those suggestions and revise your essay accordingly. Certainly reach out to me if you have any questions, and I really look forward to seeing your final draft.